All right. All right. Excuse me. Got some coughs this morning. Um, I was wanting to do a stream this morning and I was wondering what to do it on because a great thing to talk about would have been Candace Owens' Jubilee talk or talk. Is it a talk? Her Jubilee appearance against 20 feminists, I think. That was she's much more well suited for that format, I would say, than Jordan Peterson. Um, but I think I got an email. This because here's my email here, thepersonpodcast@gmail.com, where people can email me, at least for my YouTube channel, and with whatever they want to talk about, I suppose. Or questions, concern, care, all those sorts of things. But I got this question from Megan, and I didn't do a lot of prep with this, and so I don't know if I don't know how much of it. I'll just give a gist. Um, but she asked the question, "What is support?" And so I thought that was a good thing, and kind of combined. All right, let me try to frame this out the way that I'm seeing it, the way I'm understanding it. Oh, got to change this media asset. Um, this I just set this up quickly. We'll see if people show up, how this goes. So PVK's homeroom this morning, he brought up power. Power is, and because that's the main comment that I left, which is this George, hey, let me know, if I can read some of your email since you are here. So PVK brought up power, and that's a topic that gets spoken of a lot in the world today, because in a I don't know, the modern world, it just we think of everything in terms of power. I mean, we really do. Like, especially even watch that what's up, Cody? Also watch that Candace Owens thing. It's just power, power, power. Everybody's talking about power. Um and and I think a lot of that is political. And it comes Why is that? Why do we frame everything in terms of power? I think it's probably due to the way that we understand the modern world. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the machine, thinking of things in terms of systems and industries and scale and power over things. And so, like, if I have power over something, I can manipulate my environment and I can control it to get the things that I want, right? Because that was another big thing that came up in the Candace Owens Jubilee video was I think a vast majority of the feminists, except maybe Jenny, the one that she ended up choosing to talk to more at the end, the two main things that they would bring up are power, and there are some legitimate concerns there, although I don't take it as an absolute framing. And then the other thing that they brought up a lot was choice. And I think those are connected, power and choice, freedom, because that was a big thing that they would bring up is like me being able to do what I want and having the choice to do what I want is me having the power, the freedom, the choice to do what I want is the good, right? I think that's debatable. Having more choice isn't necessarily freedom, because we've talked about or many people talk about like the hell of unlimited choice, because part of that has to do with like salience and value and being in the world, making decisions in the world. How do you choose if you have all of this power due to technology and convenience and modernity, where it has given us power over in a kind of like subduing the earth, and we have power over the earth. And I mean power over in like a lording it over way. Then I can get what I want, right? I can get comfort, I can get ease, I can get instant hot water, I can get, fill in the blank. I can fly across the ocean in a plane. I can get all these things that I want. But is that equated with happiness, contentment? Because then people talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out, all of that. Like even I brought up the illustration before of Trader Joe's, and one of the things that Trader Joe's at least did initially, part of their whole marketing gimmick was, we're not going to give you unlimited options. We're just going to give you one option of the thing you want that makes it really easy. Go in and pick one can of beans, one thing, this thing, because it's not just like, what do you do when you go to a store? Because analysis paralysis, I suppose. That's the idea behind unlimited options and choice is like, and especially, right, if you're analyzing everything, the gnomic will, this or that, and you have to discern between these two things, because anytime you're making a choice, there's a discernment, right? Because to act in the world is to discern. It's to say this thing and not that thing. I don't know if that's related to reciprocal narrowing, but it's like, shoot, what is my wife? My wife is always talking to my son about this thing. What the hell's the word for it? Opportunity costs. There you go. That's what it is. Is CBAX going right now? CBAX, I'm sorry. He's probably premiering, huh? Darn it, Branch. Also, congratulations on being PDK's top person. Okay, how do I find out what's live right now? It is. Darn it. Well, I'm already going. I'm sorry, CBAX. It's a premiere. I'm not going to feel guilty. I will go back and watch it later and comment. I just won't be there for the premiere. My apologies. Mea culpa. Okay, opportunity costs, right? This really reminds me of, maybe we should watch that. This is one of my favorite Jordan Peterson videos on, Gavin has a video, Mentors and Men. All right, let's share the screen. I want to play this, and I want to do a little Bible word study, and then I will open it up. And Megan is here. Maybe Megan, you want to come in and hang out? Okay. Let's see. What are we doing? Are we sharing? Yes. Okay, let's go. Jordan Peterson, free will. Let's see what he says here. I actually think this is very related. Okay, where is the right video? No, it's when he has this big collar. This one. Or his collar's all jacked up. Let's see if it's
right now. It's easier than ever.
Nope. I will not let you advertise to me. Okay, let's see what's going on here.
The farther down the road, let's say, there's a deep idea that's associated.
This week, we're hosting a free trading and investing workshop.
Okay, we're going to do, this has to do with opportunity costs, though. I think it's very good. All right, here we go.
I want to tell you a little bit about how to conceptualize free will, I think, first, because it's obvious that we don't have infinite free will. Our choices are constrained in all sorts of ways. And I think part of the reason that there's a continual discussion about free will in the philosophical literature is because just conceptualizing the issue properly is extraordinarily difficult. So I like to think about it, at least in part, the way that you think about a game. If you're playing a game, obviously the game has rules. So if it's a chess game or a basketball game, then there are things that you can do and things that you can't do. And so it's a closed world in some sense. But the fact that there are things you can't do when you play a game also seem to open up a universe of possibilities for things that you can do. So chess obviously constrains you to a board and to a certain number of men and to a certain pattern of rules. But the strange thing is that when you put in those rules, because rules sound like limits, they sound always like things you can't do. But when you set up a constrained world like that and you lay out a system of rules, what you do is open up an infinity of a near infinity of possibilities. Same with music. Music has rules, obviously, and if you follow the rules, then you can make an infinite variety of music. And so there's
or games, right? Like basketball, chess, anything. There are rules. There are limitations, because that's what allows you to do anything. If there were no limitations, chess would not be chess. It would, or like basketball. It'd just be like, what game are we playing? Like, you come in and you tackle them and you like throw it and you go out of bounds and you're like, touchdown. It's not the game, right? So you need boundaries.
There's a very interesting dynamic that's hard to understand between constraint and possibility. And there's a deep idea that's associated with that I read in some Jewish commentary on the biblical stories that I read a long time ago, talking about the relationship between God and man. And the idea was that God, imagine a being with the classical attributes of God: omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence, all seeing, all knowing, and all powerful. What does a being like that lack? And obviously the answer is nothing, right? Because by definition, those three.
Also power. Like, I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna say this quote because it's very good. It took me a while to get it into my head because it's one of those that, like, it's a thinker. So George MacDonald, thank you, my friend Kalia Rivet told me this one, but George MacDonald, which, I mean, he basically doesn't have duds. They're all good. But this has to get into like value, purpose. Oh, Chad's texted me. I'm trying to figure out how to transfer tickets for Midwestry. What is the goal? Because I'm gonna tie this back into support, right? And we always have to think, for what? So, like, this came up in some conversation. Power for what? Power to do what? It begs the question. Like, power what? And so George MacDonald said, mere lonely power has no power to create, but love is the power of power. I think that's it, right? I just had it pulled up because I put it in PVK's video. Yeah. Mere lonely power has no power to create, but love is the power of power. See, I eventually just asked Cal, and then I said, what is it? Just tell me what it is. Mere lonely power has no power to create, but love is the power of power. So I think implicit in that comment, what George MacDonald is saying, okay, what is the goal? Telos. What are we doing? I think implied in that is creation. To create. So power, mere lonely power, has no power to create. Because power for what? What are we going to do with power? Power to create? Well, what is the power to create? Love. What do you love? Who do you love? What do you love? What do you love? What's that song? You know what I'm talking about? I think it's Who Do You Love, though. And that's why value, which Jed was saying in my last live stream, which I need to go back and watch because it's very high level stuff. He was thinking about AI and he's working on systems, but he described value as kind of this gravity well that shapes. You can almost think of it that way, that shapes your salience, why you see the things that you see, why you pay attention to the things that you pay attention to, which is why probably a lot of social media stuff can be so potentially powerful for manipulation, because if someone can control your attention through lower level ordered affections, I mean, this is some like Jonathan Edwards knowledge with free will. We're going to get back to Peterson and free will. Then it can orient lower level affections rather than your higher level affections, and it can direct you in certain ways that have huge opportunity costs. These are things that I'm talking about with my son with this. It's stuff we should all think of when you're watching YouTube videos or participating in live streams or doing anything is when you're doing this, you're not doing something else. So if you're watching my live stream right now, you are paying attention. It is a gift, perhaps, that maybe Nate would say. Gift versus sacrifice. You are giving me the gift of your attention, and hopefully I'm giving you something back. Perhaps support, right? Because support for what? And there's a necessary constraint in this, because when you're watching this, you're not doing something else. It's an opportunity cost. So you have the freedom to do certain things. You can participate in this because of certain other limitations. Maybe you don't want to do any of this and you want to go off grid. Like I'm thinking of Sherry. I was communicating with Sherry some the other day. She is away from her home more. She's like, I get the vibe. I'm going to talk to her more, but I get the vibe she's just like, she's pulling back. She's going into like a little bit of an aesthetic mode to some degree. I don't think completely, because she's been that for a lot of her life, but like you might get to the place where you feel that one feels for whatever reason or discerns, and I'm just using this example that like being online, watching videos, doing YouTube stuff it has a certain opportunity cost, and then it's stopping me from doing something else. All right, let's go back to Peterson. We'll keep playing this video, and then we'll get to support, and we'll open it up. Okay, sorry. Oh, stop it. Sometimes I just mute the video and I'll like flip off my screen because I'm just like, no, I will absolutely never buy anything you advertise to me, ever. Oh, what am I doing?
See, I'll do that again. Now, you
Sorry.
see there's a movement like that, and then my hand stopped just before my other hand. Now, it takes a certain amount of time for the neural messages to go from my brain to my arm and back. And the time it takes my hand to go like this and stop is actually shorter than the time it takes a message to get to my brain and back. So what that means is that when I plan this movement, which is called a ballistic movement, it's called a ballistic movement because it's like a bullet. Once you let it go, it's gone. There's no calling it back. I've actually organized the neurological and muscular sequences that enable that action before it's implemented. I set all that up, and then it's released, and the whole thing cascades. And so once the action has been released, let's say, then I don't really have any free will because I can't stop it. Now, so you think about that. It looks like there's a temporal gradient with regards to free will, is that as you look out into the future.
Now, this is the really keen insight, and he's using a biological thing. Rupert Sheldrake also talks about this in his book, Science Set Free, or what's the other name of it? It has two, it has a UK title and another title. Science Set Free is the one I have. But it's the Science Delusion, maybe, where he talks about like the fundamental dogmatic axioms of science. There's like 10 of them, like the 10 commandments of scientism. But he talks about this same thing that Peterson was just talking about, is that there's a And they measure this in science. There's like a nanosecond or microsecond, I forget the exact measurement of time between the decision made and the action, but it's set. It's determined. It's already happened. It's a cascade, as Peterson was talking about. All right, keep going.
Perhaps the farther out you look into the future, the farther down the road, let's say, the more free your choices are. But the closer they get to implementation, the more they become deterministic, governed by standard causal processes. And there's some transition point where they change from being what we would describe as choice, that we haven't got to free choice yet, but at least to choice. There's some transition point between that and ballistic movement. Here's another way of thinking about it. Like we know, for example, that people who are expert at playing the piano look ahead of where they're playing. And they're doing the same thing. They're watching the notes. They're seeing where they're going. And then they're disinhibiting the automated structures that enable them to play what they've practiced so thoroughly. They're disinhibiting those structures. And then they go automatically. And then what happens if you make a mistake is that consciousness notes the error and then unpacks the motor sequences that have been practiced. And then you re-practice them and sequence them again until they become automatic and deterministic. So there's
focal subsidiary integration. That's what he's talking about. Michael Polanyi's focal subsidiary integration. So you focus on something until you integrate it, and then it just plays. That's what Peterson's talking about. And then if you make a mistake, your consciousness notes that, you focus on it, then you go back and repeat it and integrate it, and then it becomes unconscious. And you're building neural pathways. And that's how it's embodiment. You embody it so you don't have to have prefrontal cortex, focal awareness on the things that you've embodied. Most of your knowledge is embodied. And your focal awareness is on potential future embodiment so that you can focus on it. That's why you're focusing on it. The point is to live everything. Rilke.
Choice in that you're reading ahead, but there's no choice in that once you've read ahead and disinhibited the actions, then they run ballistically. And then you can think about the same thing that's happening when you're driving in a car. You don't look right in front of you when you're driving a car, because whatever is right in front of you, if you're going 40 miles an hour or whatever, you've already run over. You look a quarter of a mile down the road, and that gives you the opportunity to see what's coming and to set up a sequence of increasingly automated movements that culminate in whatever it is that you're doing while you're driving. And so there's a gradation from choice to determinism, a temporal gradation. And I don't often see that addressed when people talk about free will. Now, Sam's issue with free will is that if you get someone to do something like lift their finger and you scan their brains using a variety of techniques while they're doing that, what you'll see is that there's an action potential that and you ask them to voluntarily move their finger, so they're doing it, let's say, by free choice. There's an action potential that you can read off the brain that occurs before the person either moves their finger or, let's say, decides to move their finger. And that occurs quite a bit before the feeling of voluntarism or that voluntary act. And so that's been read by Benjamin Libet, who did the experiments, as indication that even the feeling of voluntary choice is determined. But I don't.
That's the same person Sheldrake references in the book I was talking about.
Think that that's a very useful way of.
In other news, Minnesota residents are going to be happy to hear
it.
Issue, because the issue of when you lift your finger up again is it requires pre-programming to disinhibit. Like, you know how to do this, right? You don't have to learn to do that. So you have a little automated circuit that does this sort of thing. All these finger movements and everything, you can see babies practicing them. And they develop automated circuitry that tends to be posterior left hemisphere in order to run those automated processes out. And what you're basically doing when you decide to do something that's a routine that you've already practiced or made out of subroutines that you've already practiced is disinhibiting them. And the degree to which you might regard that as free exactly is unclear, as are the temporal limitations. So I don't think that Libet's experiments demonstrate conclusively that there's no such thing as free will, even though there are action potentials that indicate that there is brain activity signaling even the onset of a voluntary choice. voluntary choice early. Now, another thing that we might look at in relationship to that is, so we could look at it phenomenologically, and we could also look at it in relationship to how people treat one another. So phenomenologically, it seems clear that we have free choice, and it isn't obvious to me why we have consciousness if free choice isn't real, because consciousness looks to me like a mechanism that deals with potential before it's transformed into actuality, let's say. And I think consciousness is also...
That's what I was just talking about. Consciousness, what you can pay attention to, what you see, it's for potential. Like, that's kind of the point of self-awareness and consciousness to a lot of degree, is that you can see things that are not integrated and then integrate them. Like, that's probably what's going on with perception at all. Otherwise, you could just be unconscious like an animal. It's part of what being a rational animal is, a reasonable sheep. As you know, it was this line that stuck out to me from the baptism that I was just being a service attendant at. Reasonable sheep.
The faculty, so to speak, or a manifestation of the faculty that enables us to pre-program deterministic actions. So again, let's think about someone playing the piano. They're practicing, after you repeat and you repeat your finger movements, if you're playing the piano, any complex motor skill is like that. You have to repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And you're using consciousness to program it, to sequence the motor movements, and to pay
subsidiary focal integration. He's just explaining that.
Attention to them. That all seems voluntary, and it involves the activation of a tremendous amount of your brain, because if you're doing something new, a lot of your brain is activated. And then as you practice it, the amount of brain that's activated decreases. It shifts from right to left, and then it shifts from frontal to posterior, and a smaller and smaller area. So what's happening is that consciousness is creating little machines in the back of your head that do things in an automated manner. And the consciousness looks like consciousness appears and feels, that would be the phenomenological end, as if it's doing that voluntarily, and it is associated with a different pattern of brain activity. And so, okay, so there's the phenomenological reality of voluntary choice and effort as well, because conscious programming of that sort is also effortful. It doesn't seem to run deterministically like a clock does. And then finally, there's also, and I don't know what you think about this with regards to evidence, but what constitutes evidence is not always that easy to determine, even in the scientific domain. So think about how we think about ourselves and other people, and how we treat ourselves and other people. You could imagine that you're like a clock running down, and that's like a deterministic model. But people aren't clocks. We're dissipative structures. A clock is something that runs downhill. But human beings, you can look up dissipative structure. I think that was an idea that was first formulated by the physicist Schrodinger. We're not clocks by any stretch of the imagination, and we take energy in and we disperse energy, and we're anti-entropic in a temporary sense. So that makes us, and life is as well. Schrodinger wrote about that in a book called What is Life? And what we seem to do, this is how it looks to me. We don't contend with the present, and we're not driven by the past. Instead, what we see in front of us is a landscape of possibility. And in my wilder moments, I think that's associated with the physical idea of multiple universes, but that's in my wilder moments. It's just a speculation. And so what we see in front of us is an array of potential universes. And those are the universes that we could bring about as a consequence of our actions. And we make choices to the right or the left. There's a lot of mythological speculation about that sort of idea too, in an ethical sense, because we decide what sort of reality that we want to bring into being. And so we encounter potential like God did at the beginning of time when he made order out of chaos. Chaos is this chaotic potential. We confront
Creation ex nihilo? Potential? What is the potential? What is the tohu abohu? What is the nothingness out of which somethingness came? What is it?
Chaotic potential with our consciousness, and we cast that into reality. And that, now then you think, well, is that really the case? Well, that's hard to say because there are limits to our knowledge about consciousness and about reality. But if you treat yourself like you're a free moral agent with choice and that you can determine the course of your life, then you seem to get along better with yourself and to be less anxious and to be more productive. And if you treat other people like that they're free agents that are making voluntary choices about how reality is going to come into being, and you reward them when they do it properly, and you punish them or otherwise discipline them when they don't, when they do it badly, then your relationships with them seem to work. And then if we predicate our society on the presupposition that each individual human being is capable of doing just that, then we seem to have extremely functional societies. And so, and this is something that Sam Harris has been taken to task for many times, is if you dispense with the idea of free will, how is it you organize your relationship to yourself, your interactions with your family, and your relationships with the broader social community? It's a very complicated issue. So I believe strongly that we have free will, that we're responsible for our choices. Those choices are constrained in many, many ways. I think there's a gradient of free will from free out into the future to increasingly constrained as the present manifests itself to deterministic in the moment when
That's the thing that's really I mean, there's a lot of good things in it. He's explaining it from all sorts of different angles, but it's potential and actuality, and we are free. We have more freedom the further something is away from us in time, because you can take micro decisions and orient yourself toward that potential, because there's all these universes, toward that universe that you envision in the future that you can see, and you actualize it in little steps until the moment where you are there, and then you are no longer free in regard to that. It's bound, it's decided, you've acted it, you are it. That's Chronos, right? Through time, freedom as it relates to time. We'll go back and play this just very end again.
Constraint of free will from free out into the future to increasingly constrained as the present manifests itself to deterministic in the moment, when in the moment of action, we might think that we enter the realm of deterministic causality at the moment of action, something like that. That's how it looks to me.
All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit. So then all of that. So freedom as it sets in time, and mere lonely power has no power to create, but love is the power of power. Love whatever you envision, whatever universe out there that you see, that you want the world be the change you want to see in the world, right? Whatever universe you want the world to be, you can set your face toward the good that you see, and then you can enact towards it so that it is determined, so that it happens. So how does that relate to support? I think a lot of this has to do with care, because PVK was talking about care. Some of the stuff that I was talking about in my last live stream has to do with care. What's that saying? People won't hear how much, what is it? People won't hear how much you're blah until they see how much you care. People won't care people won't be able to see whatever you see until they know how much you care. What is the saying? I don't know. Yeah, we absolutely don't get to decide what happens, because we're seeing potential futures. So that's probably a helpful segue into support and care, and what I think, what I would advocate, what I'm trying to do, what I think that we should do in our support for each other. And it's probably related to faith, right? Because there's a certain way that you can conceive of the world and what you think should happen. The good as you understand it, right? But then the problem with that is that if you can, oh man, that's almost, oh man, that's it. How do I say this? So it's like the good as you not perceive it, conceive of it. The good as you conceive it. And then you try to use your own will and power to make decisions, to enact your conceived good in the world. The problem is you could be wrong. The problem is I could be wrong. So then faith is God saying to Abraham, go up on the mountain and sacrifice Isaac, right? Now that requires Abraham sacrificing his conceived idea of the good, which is the promise in Isaac. That's the difficulty of faith. That's the difficulty of faith, is it's submitting your conception of the good to a higher order good that you cannot yet conceive of. And how does that relate to care and support? What does it mean to give support? So I'm going to read some of this email because this was the whole beginning of this that Megan reached out to me. So C Money, our boy C Money, who hasn't made it on a stream in a while, introduced Megan to my channel. And she's been watching. So they had been talking recently about support and how it seems that people are unable to actually support each other meaningfully, honestly, genuinely in the society right now. The intimacy crisis, institutional collapse. People don't have friends. It's that joke of like the greatest miracle Jesus ever performed was having 12 close friends in his 30s. As a collective culture, it seems to be substituting propositional, societally accepted ideas of the things one must do to have the badge of being someone who supports or grasps support. I think what you're talking about, Megan, there is a little bit of identitarianism. It's just like, are you affirming or not affirming? Do you support me or not support me? If you accept this label, then you support me or you don't support me. Are you a Christian? Then you support me because I'm a Christian and I identify as Christian. So then, you support me, you affirm me by agreeing with me about X idea. But the problem with all that idea is all that self-identity is all potential, right? That's the whole debate, is like, what is a Christian? What is a good person? What is anything? The difference between potency and actuality and self-identity. But I think, so she says, but I think this is a mistaken ideal of what support actually is, and thus we are not actually supporting one another properly. No, I don't think there is a right way, but I do think but I do think the way we are supporting one another is wrong in its essence, aim, orientation. Support is not a thing to get, to have, or to get, even though the logos of this world uses the phrase of giving and receiving support as if it were an object to have and hold. I think support is the embodied respect for the humanity within an other, as it can reciprocally be felt within ourselves. I am and him, and he is me, and we, and we are all together, or whatever that lyric is. I don't know what lyric you're talking about, but a quick aside. No, I didn't. I saw a part of it, but I did not finish it, but I probably should. I saw a part of it. I was also distracted. I was multitasking. So what brings me to my email request? I think it would be interesting to get the perspective of the TLC on their ideas around the concept of support. That's what we're doing. What it looks like, feels like, what the wrong form of support looks like, feel like, what the consequences are. This is related to my stream yesterday too, of like oppositional processing and affirmation and the 5-to-1 to 12-to-1 ratio and agreement. Is support agreeing with someone else or not agreeing with someone else? I think it depends. I think it's being what the situation calls for. I become all things to all men, but for the sake of Christ, I may win some, which isn't a kind of colonizing support to get you on my team, because again, that's your conceived notion of the good, which again may be wrong and may need to die. So I think the way we are approaching or aiming at support, love, respect are all confused. I know I am doing it wrong and would love help clarifying and refining my aim. Set your face toward. She wants help setting her face toward support. How do I best support people? I think that really takes the proper integration of discernment to, I'm going to read a couple texts and then I'm going to open it up, of being what the situation calls for, right? I have become all things to all people. What do I need to be in this situation? How do I need to act right now to give this person what they need? And I think that's tied to creation and love versus mere power. Power power is for conceptions. Power is for manipulation. Power is for the will, your egoic will, your absolutized will that will not submit to its higher thing. And I'll talk about Ransom in the Ransom trilogy, in the second one, Paralandra. It's when he first comes to the planet, the green lady, the Eve of Paralandra, sees him from a distance on an undulating wave, because the islands in that, because it's a planet of oceans and there's these floating islands that undulate with the waves. She sees him from a distance and mistakes him for the king, her spouse on the island, the Adam of her planet. And she's excited. And then when he gets closer, she recognizes that it's not him. And then she's not disappointed. She's indifferent. And Ransom has a hard time understanding why she's not disappointed. And as they're talking about it, she says, "Oh, on your planet, you're the kind of people who can have an expectant good, a conceived good. And then when the actual good manifests to you, the good that Malaldil, God, has brought you, the actual good, the thing that has happened, that is determined, that is bound, that exists, when that good manifests to you, you cannot accept that good, and you can hold on to the conceived, the expectant good." So that's the kind of being that we are in our fallenness, is we don't accept the good that God actually gives us. We hold on to the good that's not real. So, okay, how do we support each other? I'm going to read a couple texts because I think it's related. One of it is about true perception. It was actually our gospel text from yesterday, or from this last Sunday. And then 1 Corinthians 8, true knowledge, I think. Now concerning things sacrificed to idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge makes arrogant, but love edifies. If anyone supposes that he knows anything, he has not yet known as he ought to know. That's the kind of knowledge in the expectant, narratival, conceptual good. But if anyone loves God, he is known by him. Love. Mere lonely power has no power to create, but love is the power of power. Okay? Now let's go to, I think it's Matthew, right? Matthew 6. It's so, oh man. Okay. This is all so good. It's not, is it Matthew? Isn't it the eye is the lamp of the body? Where is that? Yeah, it's in Matthew 6. Isn't it interesting that right after that, I'm just going to read a bunch of this. So we're starting in Matthew 6. And let's say, where do we want to start? The future. Let's start with some mammon. Well, the beginning of 6, it says, he teaches us how to pray. And then he says, when you fast, do not put on a gloomy face as the hypocrites do, for they will neglect their appearance so that they will be noticed by men when they are fasting. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward in full. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that your fasting will not be noticed by men, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And here's the text. The eye is the lamp of the body. So then, if your eye is clear, another translation for clear is, I think it's one. If your eye is one, because you have two eyes, but then your two see as one. If your eyes are, which allows you to have focus and peripheral vision. So it allows you to exercise your attention and your will so you can focus things, but also have periphery to see predators. So if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light, or if it's not obstructed, right? The splinter in your eye or the log in your eye. But if your eye is bad or divided, also double-minded, it means related, your whole body will be full of darkness, right? Again, this or that. Choice. Ooh, we need choice. But if your eye is not one, what are you going to do with that choice? You're going to be in a hell. If then the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. For this reason I say to you, do not be worried about your life. This is also related to all the end time stuff. What you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Be vigilant without anxiety. Look at the birds of the air. That they do not sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. And who of you, by being worried, can add a single hour to his life? But we think we can, right? We think all our anxieties are to prevent these chaotic things from happening. And if we're worried about stuff, then we will be more vigilant, right? I don't think anxiety produces vigilance, not the kind of vigilance we're seeking. And why are you worried about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the fields grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin, yet I say that not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much more clothe you? You of little faith. Do not worry then, saying, what will we eat, what will we drink, or what will we wear for clothing? For the Gentiles, boo, eagerly seek all these things. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Peter Thiel, heaven and earth, as on earth as in heaven. Not screw the earth, and we need to be transformed to just transcend all of this. No, that's not what we're doing. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And then it says, do not judge so that you will not be judged. For in the way you judge, you will be judged. And by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. What a verse. I mean, if we really, sorry about all the coughing, if we really thought about that, we would be a lot less judgmental, right? This is why my boy Jason says, if you forgive everyone, and if that's your measure, that's the measure that you use. I mean, this is just what Jesus said, right? By your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. If your standard is absolute forgiveness, truly, and not just like the opinion, not the potential, the actual, you actually forgive people, not just that it's like a self-identify, like I think we should forgive everyone. If you actually forgive everyone, then that's how God will judge you, with absolute forgiveness. I mean, it's pretty baller. The problem is like, can you do it? Can we enact it? Can we be holy as he is holy? Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but you do not notice the log that is in your own? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine. These are all so many verses that we talk about, right? Or they will trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Chronos. I I tend to always want to operate in the Kairos. I mean, I'm not saying I do it well, and so sometimes that's a verse I need to enact more, I think. Because if you give something to someone who's not yet ready for it, it will destroy them. It's like winning the lottery. Winning the lottery it's not gonna be a gift if you're not the kind of person that can receive that gift and be blessed by it. So, so then it goes on to prayer and the golden rule, the narrow and wide gates, a tree and its fruit, the two foundations, build your house, build your house on the rock. Sermon on the Mount's real good, real good. So what does it mean to support people? What does it mean to support? All right, I'm going to open this up. Holy 50-minute monologue. Holy 50 minutes. I'm going to pin this. Hopefully people can come in and chitty chat. Also, I know Jacob, I've seen on your channel, you have community guidelines. I tried to go in and set it up earlier. I can't see how to do it. So I need someone to help me set up community guidelines. I feel, because I do want to say certain things like no, I'm setting up, here we go, pinning my thing. Like I would say, this stuff people will probably chastise me for. Jason probably will, like no name calling. I just treat people how you want to be treated. Support other people. Sometimes people do want to be challenged. Sometimes they don't. My community guideline, maybe I would say that, be what the situation calls for. To the best of your ability, which is going to vary widely. Because again, it's the Kairos Chronos thing. All right, I'm going to look at some comments here. Jedediah, I don't know where this comment is coming from. Why did you toss the brain out? All the people wandering the afterlife brainless. Are you talking about like mummification and getting rid of the brain? Would you want your marriage to be about forgiveness alone? Yeah. What else? Like, what am I missing with forgiveness? What do you mean alone? What do you think? If it's just about forgiveness, what do you think that it's missing? Maybe we have different understandings of forgiveness. I don't think forgiveness means being a doormat and not having accountability and not having actual holiness. I don't think that's what forgiveness means, but it's just it is, as St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians, love does not keep a record of wrongs. It's the way I understand forgiveness is probably even the DBT thing, radical acceptance and change. Like, you need both. You actually need repentance and holiness. Be holy as I am holy. And you need forgiveness. I don't think holiness comes from will and power. I think it comes from love. Let's see. Chezi, I know you're here. Yeah, I think this is very true, Cody. We catastrophize everything because we cannot handle the anxiety of death. So we cope with absurdity. And maybe not the kind of absurdity McMo's talking about. You guys are talking about the Ayatollah. I don't know what that is. Sorry. Yeah, knowledge as opposed to, but that's what St. Paul is saying. To know is to love. Yeah, that's what he's saying. Knowing as you are known. So when you know how to love properly, then your knowledge will be pure. I think that's what it's saying. Gentlemen, the question for Luke. What are we talking about? Support. Oh, okay, support. Let's see here. I started reading the New Testament for the first time because of the time spent in TLC. I am able to read it as a sacred text. Without TLC wouldn't have unlocked for me Who is the supporter then? I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. You're saying reading the New Testament wouldn't have unlocked for you, and so we supported you in your reading of the New Testament. I would also say don't neglect that Old Testament. Jacob has some great Bible studies on there. David Busatil leads some of them. Who else is yeah, love is the medium in which knowledge arises. Yeah, the gravity well, right? Cody, what a great take, man. When the Lord forgives, he faces it for us until he can bring us to a place that we can face it together, where the healing can come to its fullness. I think that's almost the same thing. Like God is that gravity well of love that is holding it for you in the potency until you can be who you're supposed to be in that well where time and space and everything is a little relative, you know, until you oscillate enough in the gravity well of God's love where you can actualize in the kairos moment who you are meant to be. Yeah, we must will ourselves to be holy, but it's not a will, it's not the will of power. Although Al Ohm isn't here, but he was talking about even when Nietzsche talked the Nietzschean will to power, because Al Ohm is kind of a Nietzsche scholar essentially. He was saying the will to power is not the way that we normally conceive of it. I would look some of that up, but that's for Al Ohm to do. Al, if you're out there and if you're listening, or if you watch this, make a video on Nietzsche's will to power and do some of your awesome word study stuff. That's disgusting. I mean, yeah, isn't that interesting? I mean, ancient persons within modernity, we tend to, I was going to do the word study here. Let's do some word study on the Greek. Because I was looking at, let's go back. I will share the screen to do this. And then if nobody's going to come in, I'm just going to close this because I have to go to the bathroom. Let's do this word study. So this is 1 Corinthians 8:1. Now, concerning things sacrificed to idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge makes arrogant, but love edifies. To puff, to blow up. Fusa, bellows. So like windy, hot air, full of hot air. Inflated. So it's like a bubble bursting, it's overinflated. It's like the bursting stock market, too big to not fail, right? Arrogant, inflated, makes arrogant. Blowing, bloviated, haughty, to make proud. Full of hot air. All talk, no action. A little less talk and a lot more action, right? A little less talk, if you please. A lot more loving is what I need. Let's get on down to the main attraction. A little less talk and a lot more action. Okay. Let's do the other word we were going to talk about, knowledge. So the word of knowledge in here is related to Gnostic, I would assume, gnosis, right? A knowing, a knowledge. Agape, it's the love, agape, love or goodwill, willing the good of the other. Support, is that the support that we're talking about? Megan, are you still here? Are we getting at it? What is support? What is it? What is the goodwill? Let's look up knowledge to see here. Knowing, the act. So it is the act of knowing, or by implication, knowledge. I saw this earlier when I was reading through this and thought of T-Grog. Functional working knowledge gleaned from firsthand personal experience, connecting theory to application. Application knowledge. So I mean, it's enacted knowledge, I guess. And then gnosis, applied knowledge, is only accurate, reliable as a relationship it derives from. For contrast, the Gnostics boasted of their applied knowledge gained by their personal spiritual experiences, and it was disastrous. Gnosticism is literally the cult based on having special special purple personal knowledge, science. So could you translate that? Science puffs up, but love edifies. Okay, let's go back one more. Oh, Jed's here. What's up, buddy?
Nothing much, man. How are you?
You are smarter with languages and stuff. You want to talk about some of these words? You want to talk about some of these words, friend?
So one of the things that's kind of interesting is like you were talking about power, right? And what is it? It's in First Corinthians, I believe, or Second Corinthians. I'll have to go pull the verse, but that the kingdom of God is not in word but in power, right?
Oh, no.
Right. And so you go in there, you study, like the word is dynamis, right? And I think that we're accustomed to understanding power as something that is exerted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that's exactly even, it definitely can mean that, but I don't know if that's what it's actually describing in that verse, or that's a good description of how like God's power works, right? Is looking at this in models where power is kind of like a dynamic attractor, right? It's what moves things from here to there, right? But what happens is that I think that it's more of is God's powers expressed in his ability to draw and attract all things to himself, right?
Hence kind of the gravity.
Yeah, is kind of both the first and the final cause, right? So we get, like I have an idea that I'm going to drive from where I'm at here in Southern California to another town in Southern California, and my car is going to push me there, essentially, right? And I tend to think that that's the power of motion. But what really is the power, in some sense, is the destination that I'm going to that is pulling me there, right?
Yeah, it's like telodic causation. Yeah.
Right. So we're looking at there's a pull push dynamic within power that we tend to just think that it's the gun firing at the target and not the target pulling the bullet to the bullseye, right?
Yeah, and that's obviously outside of time because it's in the future. That's like drawing you into it.
Right. So I think that power dynamic is something that's pretty interesting to kind of explore in terms of what how it actually works. Because I don't think that we look at it on the surface level and it appears to us as I'm exerting force, and that's somewhat true, but that's also obscures what's actually happening there.
Yeah, Michael, welcome. I'm going to read this quote and then I'm going to take a potty break. This life's dim windows of the soul distorts the heavens from pole to pole and leads you to believe a lie when you see with, not through the eye. William Blake. Banger. All right. Talks among yourselves.
Well, I was double speeding from the beginning, and I got a little bit, I don't know, 15 minutes in or something, and then I saw the link came, so I was like, I'm just gonna see what's happening now. So I don't know if you caught more of the middle than I did.
I caught bits and pieces while I was making my morning coffee. So
yeah.
But what did you think? Like, I mean, some of the general things that you were kind of catching as Luke was talking.
I think it was all good exploration. It's like I don't really have like I don't know, it's weird. It's like I don't have a lot of problems, but then it's like when other people have problems with like these things, then that provokes me to think about it more in a deeper way. So then it's like so it's definitely interesting. But what was he getting at with the support thing? Because like that was the beginning of it, and I don't know if I got to where we were really talking about support. Like,
it was going into free will and Polanyi and you know, the way we learn things and you know, convert it to like you know, habit or something like that. But I didn't know where it was all going beyond that. So
yeah, the bits and pieces that I caught had to do with, you know, it, you know, whether relationships in strain or, you know, somebody that is in need is like, how do you come into a place of support, possibly in a context where conflict is happening. I hope that I'm not totally butchering everything Luke was saying, because I caught bits and pieces there.
All right, let me try to clarify. This is a good question, because I'm, as we all know, I'm like envisioning this thing that is inarticulable, and then as people, and I'm trying to talk about it, but then as people ask questions, I can hopefully clarify. So like what Jed was just saying, and this is related to like the Paralandra expectant good versus the actual good. What does it mean? What does it mean to support someone, even considering that like that thing that's pulling us to the future? You know, Sam Tiedemann will talk about the Whitestone polar bear, like the perfect ideal polar bear that's evolutionarily pulling the polar bear into what it's supposed to be as it interacts with all these things in time. So really what we're trying to do on heaven as it is on earth as it is in heaven, it's kairos, this ultimate telautic gravity. This is my framing of what we're supposed to be. We are acting towards that all the time, but yet we're doing it in all these starts and fits because we don't know exactly what that is. Like we have certain understandings of it, right? We have, but that's the problem of faith, is like my conception of that may not be what it actually is. That's the difference between the expectant good and the actual good. So how do we support ourselves and each other with the reality that that's how the world works? Because we're constantly having to die to our conceptions of what that thing is. So what does it mean to actually support someone toward that, toward all of our mystical, I mean, I would call it the mystical amorphous thing that's out there, like the actual good. Because that's what most people fight about in politics, right? Is like, what is the actual good? But the how they want to get there is different. But like, we all want the same stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can. Okay, so I definitely can think about that, you know, because I was kind of thinking about this a while ago and conceiving about like that kind of idea of Sophia, and you know, where it talks about like the wisdom that was with God in the beginning of creation, and that you know, like my conception of that is that that's the bride of Christ, like it is humanity, and like wisdom is like the collective. It's not wisdom like that you gift. It's like the actual, it's the hard won wisdom that comes through making mistakes. And in some sense, because if you think about like, you know, the way that eternity brings together like the beginning and the end, well, there's Christ has a bride, and that bride is like this forgiven and cleansed and perfected um, multitude of humanity that's made all sorts of crazy mistakes, but all those mistakes have been forgiven. But the forgiveness, but it's not like they're not forgotten though, because if you forget something, you don't know it anymore. But when you're forgiven, you have the knowledge of the consequence, what went wrong. You know, you can do better the next time. That's wisdom, you know, because you know. And now the problem is that we always lack wisdom when we're going into the unknowns of the future. Um, so I was kind of thinking about that thing, and then you know, and as that plays out, you know, like it's crazy how some of the people that we really admire because they've accomplished great things in like history are those who've overcome like incredible adversity, and so it's like, so you know, and so in some sense it's like, oh well, yeah, if you you know, if you're like orphaning a kid is like potentially like a way to make some, you know, you could make a superhero through that method, but it's like the success rate is very low, really. It's like that's a high.
Yeah, how do you support your children? Give them adversity?
Yeah, and it's the balance, right? Because then the other thing is like, we live now in the age of such technological abundance that it's very easy to produce weak, flabby children with little motivation. So I mean, it is something of that balancing the tensions between fatherly push and motherly nurture. Because I think that there is, and maybe I mean, I don't know, maybe this is just the thing. Like, there's never like an ideal. The ideal is always just the result of extremes, you know, and reactions against extremes. So, but we I think we do have we certainly have the wisdom of our own past and like history to look back on to try to figure out our new ways forward.
Yeah, I don't. So when you were talking about that, I was thinking of like, well, who is the good father, right? And so I thought of the prodigal son and the father. So, I mean, I think we can say with that parable, I think the father is portrayed as being the good father,
Mm-hmm.
but he lets the son leave. He gives the son what he wants.
Yep.
Now, I don't know, to quote the great Jedediah Pascal, like, it's all relative, but it's not arbitrary. So like the prodigal maybe needs to be given his inheritance and sent off and squander it and learn through that means. And the father, like, is the father in the story of the prodigal son, is he supporting his children?
Well, the interesting thing about that is that both sons misunderstand their father and
Mhm.
the way that he loves them. But like they developed upon, like, because we assume whatever, they're both there, growing up, experiencing the same thing. And there's like a million parallels in that parable between like the stories in Genesis, Cain and Abel, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau. Like a lot of those brotherly relationships are reflected. In each case, you have a brother, you have the same. How come you have the same mother and the same father? They turn out different. Well, that's part of, we're not blank slates. We have a unique personality. But it's interesting that they both misunderstood. Even like the older son seemed to be like, maybe he was too afraid of the father, and that's why he was so obedient. Like he got this thing in his mind that like he had to do everything perfect. He never took advantage of the love that his father had on offer, whereas the younger son like totally took advantage of that, didn't understand what his role as a son should have been like in responsibility, until until the end of the story. Then they figure it out. But I don't know. But even then, it's like, you got to make the mistakes and then you correct. So
Yeah. What I was trying to think of is trying to tie all this into power and will and forgiveness and love, and thinking of that in terms of like the gravity well, where it allows people. I mean, that really, thinking of love as gravity is what I really think of as divine Sophia and being held under like the wings of the mother hen. It's like, it's just that space that allows you to come to yourself.
Well, and I think too, Luke, like one thing that might be helpful is we look at kind of back to your original question of, what is relational support, is there is a telic or teleological gravity that love entails, right? That's definitely an element, but it's
not arbitrary. Yeah.
There is an epitelic element of love that enables it to emerge freely. and there is an atelic or ambient sense of love. And this ties into like Heidegger's logic of valuing things simply because they are, not because they're headed in a certain direction, right? So it's an inclusive, it's an
Unconditional love of a mother.
right. It's the field versus the gravity, right? The field just simply says it is ambient, it exists, therefore it has value as it is. And so I think as we support people, one of the dangers is if we get so teleologically aligned, we end up over determining an outcome that is, we can force something that needs to both have the freedom to emerge and the freedom to be as it's becoming. Right?
Is that the difference between manufacture and creation?
Well, I mean, I think manufacture is definitely, it's there, like we have stuff, right? But it's not the underlying movement of creation is one of love, right? And it's emotion that begins, abides, and ends in love.
Right.
And so
I'm trying to get the distinction between allowing the thing to come to be
right
in its own way versus forcing the idealized conception of what the thing is supposed to be. This is like simply in parenting. This is just like, this is what I think you need to be as my child. And I'm going to so force you into this thing. We're like, maybe that's not who they are.
Well, and if you think of like what the father does in The Prodigal Son is he lets both of his sons live with a kind of a benign level of deception, right? About who he really is, as a kind of a prelude to a future realization. So he gives them the space to misunderstand, and really does not, his correction is simply in his action. Like his correction is him waiting for the prodigal on his return. It's not like he's not waiting to render judgment. He's just simply there. In that act of embrace is the full disclosure of what the son could not see in the father from the very beginning, right? And so I think that there is an element where trying to support someone in a context of compassion is sometimes to let it be, right? And understand where you can help them and where you can't. Because like if I'm operating, let's say like the prodigal, from a paradigm of like, I need to get mine, and like in some sense the best thing you can do sometimes in that case is stand out of the prodigal's way and don't intervene, and allow the prodigal to learn the lesson that his course of action is taking him, right? So support does not always mean, it can mean intervention. If your kid's running out into a street, you grab your kid, right? But there's certain things there's certain ways that people are that you can't spare them from.
Right.
Mm.
Right. And I suppose that's the difference. That's the difference between the malevolent father who's trying to dictate and control and colonize everything, and then the malevolent mother who's trying to protect from everything to like unhealthy degrees,
Right.
Dude, Stetson, we're gonna have to hang out sometime. You start quoting Nickel Creek to me. Good grief. This is a guy who I think he showed up in PBK's last live stream, right? Is this the same guy, Stetson? Were you there, Sartori? You're always
I think
around.
that sounds familiar. Yeah. Yes, I think he was last Friday.
Those are some California people. Nickel Creek?
Dude,
Jed, you ever heard of Nickel Creek? California's a good place.
I have. Well, California is a good place. I didn't know that Nickel Creek was California.
Back in the day, I think they all grew up because they've been playing. They're all prodigies, so they like started their band when they were like adolescent, preteens, and then Chris Thiele, like being one of the best mandolinists of all time, like he put out like an instructional video when he's just like chubby. She's like 15, it's teaching people how to play mandolin. But I think they're all from Southern California. Yeah, it's a great song. I think it's from their original album. Anyhow.
been years since I've even heard the band name Nickel Creek.
Oh man, they're like, that's one of those bands. Yeah, here. This is all. Yeah, this has all been heavy. Let's close out with silliness. We can weave in and out. I like the gravity and the levity. But Nickel Creek is one of those bands where, like, if I throw on that original album and I'm just listening to it, it's just like, it's like a time machine. It just takes me back to like my early 20s. Because I've seen them in different iterations of Nickel Creek, probably more so than any other band live. I've probably seen them collectively 4 or 5 times. I've seen Chris Thile in his different band iterations 2 or 3, 4 times. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen him a lot. Bluegrass is awesome.
I guess we have different ways of getting there. Mine would be probably like loading up some 80s power ballads.
That worked too.
You know, like Foreigner, I want to know what that is. Like, driving down the road, screaming it at the top of my lungs, kind of thing. You know,
that is some good stuff. My wife will hit some of that, like, you know, a good rock set jam or something. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sartori, what's the music that takes you back? Are you a music guy?
Oh yeah, I'm a music guy. So the big, there's a chapter in my book about this, but the like wow moment for me was there's a band called Further Seems Forever. It was the singer from Dashboard Confessional, but it was the band that he was in before he went solo, and like, because all my friends were like really into like hardcore and metal and stuff when it was like, that was like the Christian metal scene, and then I heard that band. I was like, this is cool, because it was actually like all guys that used to be like in hardcore bands, but they were like, we want to be melodic and do emo. So I had the singer from Dashboard Confessional, and that was like a hugely influential, like their first album especially was hugely influential, because I was always trying to find like other things that sounded like it, but it was like not. It was like parts of other genres that you would find. Like they're like the Steely Dan of emo music. I don't know, like, because they had like a lot of weird, almost jazzy, like technical weird stuff in there, but also the songs were like good. So, you know, the lyrics and all that stuff, because that was like, everybody wanted to sing. That, like, if you were like in a band, you know, you'd have all these bands that are all like playing metal and stuff, but then when they're driving around in the van, they're all like singing emo music and singing Dashboard Confessional, because that's what everybody really loved, but they were too like insecure to like try it themselves. So it was like the guilty pleasure of all the tough kids or whatever.
Oh man, that's like the screamo. That's where you combine that intense emo with like the rage at the same time.
Yeah.
Jason is currently in a hardcore band. Jason, what's the name of the band? Promote it. And then what I think of
my stepdaughter. Thanks, Grim.
And then what the emo stuff, or like the old school Christian punk, do you know the band Reliant K?
Oh yeah.
If I hear like For the Moments I Feel Faint, I'm just like, that's just like time machine. Okay, Jacob, you came in. Tell me what's up. Do you have thoughts on what it means to support?
I do have I do have thoughts. What struck me was your readings kept on contrasting love and knowledge.
Yeah.
And that just seems to be such a bad framing to me.
But does it make sense in the terms of like knowledge as what you conceive of as the good versus like your idea of the potential good, almost your egoic understanding of the good versus the good that God actually provides for you? Because we don't really know. It means lean not on your own understanding.
See, this is the whole thing. Like maybe the word knowledge in Greek is so different from the word knowledge in Hebrew.
What is it in Hebrew?
And I am going to Jason's wedding, so Jed, if you are going, I will see you there.
I might have to. My dad lives out not too far from where
Jason. Well, if
where
you're in
Jason-
Southern California, I am actually kind of offended you've never come to our estuary, but that's okay.
Well, you're gonna have to. Nobody's ever sent me an invitation.
I'm
Jed is very
Are you
periphery.
is that what's happening right now? Is I'm getting invited to go to estuary? I've joined like several cults already. I'm a little concerned.
my cult is the best. We had a joint birthday on Saturday. The
With
only
what?
reason I'm wearing this hat is because it was a birthday present. For,
Nice.
I should actually pull up the picture.
Where do you guys meet? Jacob, where do you guys meet down here?
At my place.
Well, like in
I live near LAX.
Can you put the address in the thing? I'll throw it up on screen.
Address, social security number. I'll find you.
Well, I mean, finding me is not hard. Like I tell people, if you're too dumb to get my cell phone number off the internet, I don't know if I want to talk to you. I dox myself all the time, but my home address I don't put up. But
right.
Let me see if I can find the picture. Oh God, I would have brought it up. But
put your contacts in the private chat. Email each other.
We could do that, but my email is just my last name @gmail.com. So that's pretty
okay.
Cool.
I'd love to drop in with you guys sometime. That'd be cool.
Here is the picture. Oh, I looked up the settings you were looking for.
Oh, you did? That'd be helpful to me. Let's make the end of this practical.
It's just in your studio. Go to studio settings and community moderation. Okay. So that's what Trey, he's the guy who insists on taking his shirt off all the time, was decided that we're having a John the Baptist themed birthday party. So he got locusts and he made honey cake. And,
delicious.
And we went, well, I didn't go bobbing for apples, but we had a bobbing for apples contest, and Grayson came in first. And yeah, it was fun. It was fun. So
this is a great insight, Stetson. Loving and knowing are one. I never knew you.
This picture kind of looks like No Shave November got out of control.
well, he bought the they were actually apparently Jesus outfits. I didn't think I looked like Jesus. But
well, we are in Southern California. He goes by Jesus down here.
Back to love and knowing. So chapter 3 of Genesis, it says Adam knew his wife and she conceived.
Yeah. Like for sure. But that's that's creativity. Right?
Yes, exactly. So knowledge, if you're contrasting knowledge with love, then I don't think you know love or love knowledge.
But what I guess my point, one of the things I'm trying to talk about is it's that our limited knowledge that we then absolutize and demand and insist that the world conforms to our understanding. That's the kind of knowledge.
That's because your knowledge isn't knowledge.
Right.
But Jed, do you know Greek?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So Father Stephen insists that the Lutherans have mistranslated the Christian Bible, and a lot of the buts are actually ands. But
which would be that's a reasonable claim.
And so while you were doing the readings, I was actually wondering if that is the case, where with all of these love but knowledge things, because what's his name? Luther really hated knowledge.
All right, Denise. She's here. We're about to shut down. Denise, give us some of your wisdom at the end here.
Yeah, I know. I just jumped on because I saw that both Jacob and Mike were here. And I wanted to apologize because it was on Mike Sartori's stream that I kind of lost it, got triggered and got emotional about something. And I just wanted to throw an apology out because it was personal stuff that was being, I should have simply withdrew when I realized that I was mixing personal angst with the subject at hand. It was when Jonathan Pajot was being discussed and so on. And I don't want to reopen the discussion. I stand by what I said, but I certainly don't stand by how I said it and allowed it to happen. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, thank you, Denise. I forgive you. I appreciate that. I don't know. My streams tend to trigger a lot of people, so I guess I'm trying to figure out what it is about the questions I throw up there tends to do that. Okay, sorry. Didn't you hear me?
He said he forgives you, and his streams tend to trigger people, and he doesn't know why.
It's because
Hey guys, I got to take off, but
all right, yeah.
This morning. Hope
Thanks
all
for coming, buddy.
I will come up to an estuary at one of these points. I mean, I hang out in this corner every once in a while.
Are you familiar with like the whole estuary shtick? You'll learn, I guess.
Well, yeah, Nate's tried to rope me in multiple times, and I get like I got three kids, 5 stepkids, and it's just my life is rarely afforded time. But I would go. Yeah. All right, guys, take care.
Sweet. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. You got any last words, Mike or Jacob?
To know is to love, and to love is to know.
Love it. Great. Mike? Tense Before Temples. He's got a chapter on that. I got a chapter on that.
I got a chapter on everything.
That could be your little tagline. Look at that. I need to buy a hard copy too, because why not? Why not have one?
Well,
I got this as a present from someone who shall not.
I'm not going to be able to make it to Midwestuary, but I'm thinking I might send a box of books there. So we'll see. So.
Wow, that's very generous. It is good. Like I read the one chapter for you because I said I would, and it was great. The one chapter that I've read so far was really good, and I feel like you really, I don't know. I feel like I've seen you bloom in the few years that I've known you, and like really cohere and get a lot of stuff figured out. Writing the book was maybe part of it, but I always like your takes. They don't trigger me. So,
thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to shut it down, and sorry, Seabax, for stepping on your stream or your premiere. All right.